Hi, my name's Rob Ryder, speaking out of Cornwall. Um, this video is a little bit controversial, even the people who are into alternative research, because I'm going to make a statement and then obviously talk about that statement. And I'm going to say autism vaccines are not the cause. Yeah, so you notice I put a little bit of emphasis on the there instead of not the cause, the. Yeah, so that would indicate it's multi-factor. Now, a lot of people will put up autism. Yeah, let's not define autism at the moment. That's quite difficult in itself. But a lot of people will put up the massive increase in the vaccination schedule to the increase in autism. And there's lots of information that comes back to that. Well, we weren't defining it properly before, we weren't testing for it, etc. That's why it's increasing. You can have all these debates, but all you need to do is look at the vaccine inserts and the side effects to know that there is definitely a connection there. Yeah, but I don't want to press on that on this particular video. Yeah, I want to talk about another aspect that very few people are talking about. So the absolute fact is there are unvaccinated, what we call autistic children. So there are obviously other factors in this, obviously. Now, obviously you have to define autism, which isn't that easy really. Should we say unsociable characteristics, find it difficult to socialize, can be very aggressive or very introvert. You know, it's quite a variety of things, should we say. It's quite difficult to define, but I know there are unvaccinated, what we call autistic children. I remember Bruce Lipton years ago mentioning the Romanian orphans in the orphanages. Now, they were given physically food, nourishment, but they weren't given the affection. Yeah, and pretty much all of those Romanian orphanage children turned out and developed to be autistic children and adults. So we have to look at what's going on here. Now, to get a full understanding of this, you would have to go back right on my channel to, I think, the first video, Patrick Quantum, the creation and formation of a human being via opinions, to get a deep understanding on this. I'm just trying to get this in a very shortened version. And then this goes back to what people call attachment theory. So when a child is conceived and it's developing in the womb, the only connection to the world it has is the mother. And even after birth, the only connection the child has to the world is the mother. Without the mother, the child is completely and utterly lost. One, physically, it doesn't know how to feed or defend itself or anything. But two, it doesn't know the world. It doesn't know how to interact with the world. Therefore, it doesn't know how to respond and therefore behave. It's completely lost. And as Patrick mentions, the first few years, definitely the first 18 months, the baby is completely living via the mother. So if the child is living via the mother, then the mother's perception of the world is what the baby is feeding off. And this is where it starts getting really interesting. And this is why I'm saying autism vaccines are not the cause of it, because it clearly isn't. And this is a discussion not really being had too much. So I'd like to bring it out. So like I said, I'll repeat, there are unvaccinated, what we call autistic children. So it comes down to the children from conception, from probably 10 to 12 weeks when the human form takes place, because the first few weeks after conception, there's no human form there. So there's no what we would call human energies, feeding off the mother. After that, this new baby at 10, 12 weeks starts not only feeding physically off the mother, but feeding off her energy. We know they can feel the emotions of the mother. They can hear, for example, after a longer stage of development, they could hear the father's voice coming. Yeah. Now, if that father was coming in and the mother went into a loving state, then that would be the connection the baby would have of the father, hearing that voice. So when the baby comes out in the real world, seeing the father, that would send the baby into a loving state. If the mother was in a bad relationship and the father came in and that voice was heard and the mother went into a fearful state, that would what the baby would then associate the father being afraid. But the mother is also in a massive environment feeding off the whole world. Now, if depending, it's very complex, the mother's own personal view of the world, the mother's own personal history. If the mother views the world as a dangerous, sad, fearful place, then that is the world this developing baby believes it's coming into. Why do I say believe? Because obviously that's one experience of an enormous, expansive possibilities in the world. There are good experiences, there are bad experiences. Maybe this one particular mother has had bad experiences, led to bad perceptions, which aren't objective, they're subjective. And this is how the baby is fed emotionally. So if you just imagine for a moment a baby in the womb getting ready to come out into this world, and a mother's been in a stressful state, maybe a stressful relationship, had previous stresses, the world is, everything's fearful, everything's anxious, etc. Would you want to come into this world? Yeah, that's a big, big, big thought process, things people have to think about. This is the world the baby believes it's coming into. It's obviously one perception of the world, but that is the reality. So that baby, as it's being formed, is feeding off the mother to develop in a very specific way, mainly in the mind, to survive in the world it believes it's coming into. Now, if this world is fearful and causes stress, anxiety, etc., you could have a couple of options that you would get. Come out into the world, and obviously through the first few years of life, if that's also the perception, because the first couple of years at least, the baby's still feeding off the mother, and then the environment expands, and the baby takes on other information from the father, relatives, then goes out into the world, and it's still really just absorbing and looking at the world it's in for the first 6 years or so, to create these subconscious programs to know how to respond to life. Because we don't consciously respond to life. Life is so dynamic and fast, you just responding. Patrick talks a lot of big difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is there's no thought process there at all. It's just an automated reaction, whether it's a good reaction or bad. But when you choose, when you get older in life and you can look back at and look how you're reacting, then you can make conscious responses to life. But in this period of development, you're just absorbing the world you believe you're in, because the good, the bad, and the ugly is always there. And that will create behaviors to survive in the world. So when you live in a fearful, tense, anxious world, what we know is fight or flight. So some, should we say, autistic behavior could be very aggressive towards the world. Why wouldn't it be? And some could be very introvert and want to go into themselves and escape from the world. Why wouldn't they be? Why wouldn't they behave like that? So you need to get a bigger understanding of behaviors. So that these behaviors, what we call autistic, are actually balanced, intelligent behaviors according to the perceptions of the child. And a lot of people have said, if you were to go in ancient villages and communities, you wouldn't get this behavior because they're in nature. They live in a lot more natural, simple lives without the modern stresses. So what people need to understand, it's this illusionary system that has destroyed the natural living of humanity that is creating these behaviors. Now, what you do find is a lot of so-called autistic children like to get addicted to screens. Most children do anyway, but especially autistic children. Why? Well, if the world is fearful, anxious, scary, and you want to escape from that, because you can't see it any other way, then in a screen, playing a game or watching, you have stability there. It's the stability that you need that you can't find in the world. Now, going back to the last few years, you look at what children went through. Yeah, the younger children especially, that would have created beliefs and perceptions of the world to put them in a fearful state. How many children have mental health problems now? I mean, adults, yeah, but that's kind of a separate issue. According to this, I'm sticking to children at the moment. How many younger children now are going to develop psychological issues, anxious about the world that they believe they're in? Now, how many children who were conceived or born, especially conceived since 2020? So can you imagine a child being conceived in 2020 and the anxious, fearful state of the mother coming into the world, the anxious, well, conceived is one thing. Can you imagine if you were born when you've got that physical observation then? So that maybe you were maybe 6 months gone at the beginning of the lockdown, and then you come out into the world, so you've had an experience of anxiety in the womb, and then you've come out into the world and all you can see is masked with people. Yeah, you can't connect to anything. You just see these eyes, possibly even if your own mother. Where is this attachment to the world? Because the babies cannot interpret the world on their own. They're not capable. They interpret it through the mother, and they're looking at the mother, and they're looking at the surroundings and the father and the brothers and sisters. How is their brain going to develop? Yeah, this is going to cause enormous problems. Now, take it one step further. We know there is a transhuman agenda. What if in 10, 15, 20, 30 years, you've got so many traumatized people, at the drop of a hat, they will happily escape into the video artificial world? The drop of a hat. Why? Because this world that they perceive they're in is fearful, scary, it creates anxiety. Why wouldn't you put one of these sets on and escape into the Matrix world? If some people in this world would like to create robotic transhuman beings because then they can easily control them, why wouldn't traumatized people see that as an option for peace? So it's you always have to look deeper into what's going on and how they're going to get from A to B to C, etc. And this focus on vaccines causing autism and being the only cause, one, is wrong, and it doesn't help people see the bigger picture. Now, I'm not going to say vaccines aren't toxic, because they are. You just look at the side effects, and they can cause terrible damage. They do. Look at the vaccine payouts. But I'm saying there's a big piece of information being missed there, a huge piece. How they're controlling the perception. Now, when you're an adult, it's very difficult for them, yeah, to start to control perceptions, because you're quite developed in your opinions. The younger you do it, the better. Even at conception, after like I said, in 10, 12 weeks, that's when they know the influences are coming in. Most women who are pregnant are thinking about, oh, look after me diet, don't do this, don't be near passive smoke, all this kind of stuff. But they're not thinking about their emotions. Yeah, what's really feeding the child and creating up this image of the world that it's this child's coming into. That when a woman wants to conceive, really ideally in an ideal world, you would plan it a year before and get yourself, the man and the woman, in the best physical, emotional and spiritual condition to conceive, because that's the energies that will come together to create a new energy, a new being. And then at conception, the woman, should be focusing, if she wants to look after a baby, because women are really sacrificial and put the baby first, then they have to look after themselves. It's just like being on a plane when you put your own oxygen mask on first before the children's, because to help the children, you need to be in a state to help the children. So you need to look after yourself. If you can't breathe, you can't help the children. It's the same as a mother. She has to take that sacrificial energy for her child and pause a moment and think, right, what is the best for my child? The best for my child is to look after myself. And that's where the man has to step in and say, right, and be a man, not a child, and say, right, what is the best thing for my family at this moment and my soon-to-be child? Well, it's to look after my wife. It's the best thing. So she's got everything physically, emotionally, spiritually to relax and bring a child into the world with a more balanced view. That it's not all bad. The emotions go up and down. You're not going to have this beautiful pregnancy where you're never unhappy or anxious or anything. And that wouldn't be a real view of the world anyway. But when it's constantly fear, anxiety, stress, that's the world that the child will believe it's coming into, which will then create all these actually intelligent behaviors. So autism isn't anything that's gone wrong. Fight or flight isn't anything. It's a perfectly intelligent response to how somebody perceives the world. And I think this should be more of a conversation, because you look at the education, you look at the encouragement by Western governments. Let's just stick to the UK. The government we're helping you as a mother to get back to work. It's going to like 2 years old now. They want to get your child as soon as they can to instill their perceptions and beliefs into that mind. And they're making think a woman is doing a great job by getting back to work. A woman should be with the baby. That's it. That's it. It's the only way to deal with this is to take control back of our own emotions and perceptions and beliefs, and just ignore what they are trying to instill in us. We have to take control back of that. But when you're seeing behaviors in children, always remember that it's these extreme behaviors, there's an intelligence behind them. They might seem quite destructive, and they can be destructive, but there's an intelligence behind it, and there's a reason for it. It's not just bad children. It's bad environments and perceptions of environments. And this is how they're going to drag humanity, in my opinion, into this transhuman future. Because people who are traumatized, who can't find any peace in this world, will gladly submit to an artificial world. And we have to, well, we're going to have the consequences of the lockdown going on for years. But the longer we take to deal with this, the harder it's going to be. And the longer it takes for people to understand this information, we'll just continue and continue to bring children into a world who have fight or flight, antisocial behavior, because they can't connect to the world that they perceive themselves in. It's going to take a lot of work to unpick all this, but we have to start now. We have to start now. Thank you.